Hello.
Good evening.
Hi, Lee. How are you doing?
I'm well.
Good. I'm excited to keep seeing you back at these. And I was excited to get to
Hey,
finally
Lee.
meet you in person too.
How you doing, young man?
Doing good. Everyone always seems taller in person.
The thing is facing down, yep.
I thought you were going to say
Yeah.
heavier, and I say no. That's not the. That's
No.
not the.
No, these cameras are small. They only add like 2 pounds.
Yeah, right.
Zoom is like the great equalizer. We're all the same height.
It is.
Yeah,
Right.
that's the way it ought to be.
That's good to see you, man.
Hi, Tom. So, hey, Mark, how are you doing today? We got Richard.
Doing good.
All right. Everybody's joining early. We're already up to 40 participants so far. So for those of you that are joining us, when you join, you're automatically muted and your camera is off. So, but you can flip it back on and tell us hi if you've got an opportunity.
Well, good afternoon, everybody.
Hi.
Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Trying to mess with my camera.
Hey, Tanya.
Hey, Brian. So,
Charles Burton here's flexing his view. He's got a nice corner office with a view out there. That's definitely the angle to have for your Zoom meetings, man.
let's see. Hey, Charles. Okay, you do have a nice view. So, where are Charles? You're in Lake Charles, right?
Let's see if my mic's working.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. Looks like it's gonna rain. Yeah, I'm in Lake Charles, downtown.
Okay, I'm Lafayette. It is thundering out here, so I was kind of hoping that all the technology would work and no blinkage while we have the meeting. So, hello,
Evening, everyone. Dean Mallory here.
hi, Dean.
Hey, Dean.
Hey.
I don't hear your voice very often anymore. It's nice to hear from you.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Raining
Well,
outside. Good to be inside.
Yes. Yeah.
Dean, I heard you
I'm
retired,
blocking out
correct?
myself.
I did.
You got the work release.
Yep,
So,
yep.
It's a good plan.
Yeah.
So. And for those of you that are joining, just a couple of really quick updates. Jared and I had the opportunity kind of towards the end of March and beginning of April to be in Orlando for PMI Leadership Conference. Lee Lambert was there with us as well. So it was the first in-person conference that we had the opportunity to attend in 3 years. Got a lot of different updates from national, a lot of different initiatives going on. So one thing that I would kind of take out of that as the theme was just knowing that you were not alone. I mean, I know a lot of us with project management share our fair share of struggles and communications and getting stakeholder expectations aligned. And Jared and I had that opportunity to hear firsthand from other people on some of the different ways that they're using to mitigate those challenges. So, and if y'all hadn't had the opportunity to visit PMI.org, please do. I was looking in there earlier, and a lot of the different practice guides that they've got out now, like with Disciplined Agile, Choosing Your Wow, Citizen Developer. If you're a member of the national organization, you have that opportunity to download those resources for free.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Tanya. It was, I think, the most fascinating thing that came from the Leadership Institute meeting was kind of, the idea that we recognize that the nature of work is changing. We recognize that technology is having a huge impact on that, and COVID's had a huge impact on sort of catalyzing that change, but not really not everyone, really no one is super clear on exactly what that's going to look like, right? Everyone's sort of embracing it, embracing virtual, embracing all these hybrid formats and embracing all these new ways of doing the work. But no one is in a position to go and say, look, this is what this looks like now, everybody. So here's what good looks like, and let's all go and emulate that. What's fascinating about it is that it's sort of a how do you say it? It's sort of a mission that everybody's on now, which is to, let's go and experiment, right? Let's go and try some new formats. Let's try some new things. Let's try working in some different ways that haven't really been tried before, and let's see what works, and then come back and share it. So that was a really resonant theme kind of throughout that weekend, and I really enjoyed that. And we're enjoying bringing that back to the group. And so, stay tuned for the next few weeks. We'll be kind of putting things in a state of flux. We'll be experimenting a little bit. We're looking at some technology and some new tools that may really kind of change the experience of what it means to be part of our chapter and what it means to be part of PMI. So we're really looking forward to that for sure. So, Tom, good evening. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us.
You bet.
Tom, we haven't met before. I'm Jared, by the way. We've
Nice
been
to
on a
meet you,
couple of
Jared.
emails. I know my name doesn't come up here. Thanks. Yes, for sure. But look, I loved the topic when Tanya reached out to me and told me what it was that you were bringing. I come from technology myself. I was in software for many years. We built and ran a successful SaaS company in the oil and gas space. So I love the theme of what you've come to talk to us about. Humans are hard, coding is easy. Very, very true, as I've learned firsthand. So, with your wealth of background in technology, with some of the challenges that you've experienced, at that intersection between technology and the people who use it, very much looking forward to what you have to bring us this evening.
Thank you.
Tanya, do we have anything else before I kick it over to Tom?
There's no other big announcements. No, I know I'll put on the communication about 5:45, but we can go ahead and get started with things. We've got about 57 participants on the line right now.
Nice big audience. Well, look, Tom, I'm not going to hold you up. I'm really dying to hear what you have to say to us. So I'm going to go ahead and send this your way. Okay.
Excellent. Well, Jared, I appreciate that. So as Jared mentioned, you heard the topic of tonight is going to be humans are hard, code is easy. But as I like to start these presentations, I like to make them interactive and get to know you guys. I know most of you are in the Baton Rouge area, but I see a lot of people, as I put in there and a lot of other people put in there. We got people from Oceanside, California, St. Louis, so Las Vegas. So we got people from all over. So it's good to get to know Northern New Jersey. Wow. You're not very far from me here in Newtown, Pennsylvania, but that's good that people can share that in there and where, as Tanya and Jared mentioned, PMI is changing, everybody's changing. We're working in different ways. So that's one of the great things about, being able to do things like this in these presentations, talking to people from all over. It's always fun. As you kind of piece together there, as Jared mentioned. So I've been a developer for many years. So that's kind of, as you think about this presentation, that's one of the things that just look at it through that lens, but that's not, I'm not going to talk about coding or how to be a better coder. You're going to learn some things about some of my experiences. And as I've presented this to many PMI chapters, a lot of people have had similar experiences or we'll share some of those as well. But to get us started out, I like to do a few icebreakers. As we can see, we're learning where people are from here in the chat. That's a great thing to see where people are from. Also, too, I want to ask you guys a question. So feel free to come off mute, or if you want to put it in the chat, I'm good with either way. I'd like to be flexible on that. If you could have one superpower, what could it be? So feel free to come off mute, or you can share that in the chat. Either way is fine with me. If you had one superpower, what could it be?
Tom, Richard Lewis here.
Yeah, Richard.
I think my superpower would be making people listen.
Make people listen. Yes.
At least listen better and be quiet and try to, I think that would be the start of listening better,
Yeah.
to actually be quiet and listen to what the other people or person has to say.
Yep. That's good. Very good, Richard. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
I see we have a lot of things in the chat here. So Jay says flying. I see teleport, see through walls, read minds, stop time. Lots of good things people have shared. Invisibility. Make cake disappear. Interesting. That's one I haven't heard before. I've done this a lot.
I was just laughing at it.
Yeah, isn't that's good. Impeccable comprehension, imagination. Oh, that's a good one. Visibility. You know, I hear the teleportation, flying, stop time, or a time machine. Read minds. I don't know if I've heard that one. That's a good one. So yeah, lots of good ones. Anybody else want to share? You can feel free. Like I said, you can share it off. Come off mute too. Perfect recall, Mark. That's good. You know, I have to say, Mark, it's hard to argue with somebody who has perfect recall, because my daughter has near close to perfect recall, and she comes up with these facts that I'm like, I'm just amazed. But yeah, that's a good one, Mark.
And I was just thinking that I can make a cake disappear already. So
I think I've tried before, but I usually end up with a gut ache.
Yep.
Oh, yes. Yes.
I can do it a slice at a time. Spread
Yes.
over a few days.
Yep. All right. Another question. Now, this one's I've shared this with some PMI groups, and I've shared it with some BA groups, and they found this one interesting. So, where have you struggled with a developer? So, as Jared mentioned, I'm a developer by training. I like to start by saying I'm sorry, but where have you struggled with developers? As a project manager, I'm guessing there's probably been a few times where, and I think this probably alludes to what Richard said, getting people to listen. Sometimes I know us developers we can, want to get into the code too fast, or we get distracted by our phones or something. But where have you guys struggled with developers? Translating the communication. Yeah. Communication in layman's terms. Yep. Very good. Very good. Reality manipulation. Cool. That's good. Project your reality. Yes. Technical gaps. Yeah. Yeah. You guys are alluding to a lot of those problems that we run into, don't we? With maybe the translating where, I'm coder Carl here, and I want to, talk in my coder speak. And then the project manager or some of the other people, are like, one of my friends once said this: speak human, please. I thought that was good. We need to speak human. We need to be able to make sure we're talking the same language. So yeah, Candace, communication in general. Poor direction up front, yielding gaps later. Yeah. Yeah. Jay, I was having a conversation about something similar today, where I work full time, and there's a lot of those communication gaps that we have up front, and then it just kind of cascades down the line, doesn't it? On the BA side. Yeah. Very good. All right. One last question that I want to share with you guys. Misguided goals. Yeah, that's a big one, isn't it? One last icebreaker question. So, what makes people successful in project management? So feel free to share that here or in the chat. Influence. That's good, Kimberly. Effective communication. Yeah. Effort, purpose. Lots of good stuff people are sharing here. Collaboration and communication. Very good. Yeah, lots of good things. This is a very interactive group. I commend you guys. I know you got 61 people here. I can see by the participants. So you guys are really sharing in the chat. That's great. Trustworthiness, listening, empathy, leadership, communication. Very good. Awesome. That's a lot of good stuff. Now, just so you guys know, we're going to talk a little bit about some of these things that we've talked about already. Communication is going to come up here, but just to kind of give you a clue of how this is going to work. So I have a little bit of I have a prepared, it's a keynote presentation, but it's a presentation nonetheless. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break it up so we can have a little more conversation, and feel free as we go throughout this presentation. If you have a comment or a question, feel free to share that in the chat. But before we get started, I'm going to jump into that here in a second, but we're going to do about 15 or 10 minutes so presentation. Then I have a few questions for you. I'll always welcome other questions too. And then we'll have that kind of our halftime, if you will. And then we'll go into the second half of the presentation and we have some more questions. And then we'll do a little bit of a debrief and stuff as well. But any other questions before we jump in? All right. I will jump in, and like I said, if you guys have questions, feel free to share them in the chat, and we'll definitely have time to have more interaction and communication here coming up. So this is the first half of Humans Are Hard, Code is Easy. Here's a string of thoughts that ran across my mind early in my programming career. Why can't people just leave me alone and I can do my work? I can figure this out myself. I don't need others' help or any input to turn this thing around. Why don't people understand me? I think it must be they're just dumb. They don't recognize genius when they see it. Perhaps you've been there too, a frustrated developer who feels like they know enough. However, the success you thought you'd have is out of reach. You see others who make better strides, but why? Is it a skills gap? I want to share with you how I learned about my skills gap. Java, check. Linux, check. SQL, check. Humans? What? Humans are hard. Code is easy. So I focused on the technology. One of my first mentors was a database administrator named Doyle. He really knew his stuff, but didn't say much. That can make learning challenging. One thing Doyle would do is fix the problem for me. Doyle would fix it so quickly and then leave. What did you do? He was already gone. Working with Doyle gave me some insight. Technical people hate explaining basic stuff. Ask them a simple question and they will flip the bozo bit on you. What is the bozo bit, you say? A few years after working with Doyle, I got to work with a software architect named Corey. He had many interesting observations. One thing Corey would do if you asked him a stupid question, the kind of question you could have figured out by doing some basic research on your own, he wouldn't answer your question or work with you. That, my friends, is the bozo bit. Bozo, of course, refers to Bozo the Clown, the bit in reference to computer bit or binary storage. Corey was pretty extreme, but many developers can be that way. To gain respect from those developers, we need to know the technology. Humans are hard, code is easy. So I focused on the technologies. I learned new coding techniques. I kept my head down and tried to avoid getting the bozo bit flipped on me. A few years later, I transitioned into a new job, technical lead. One year during my annual evaluation, my leader said to me, "Tom, we think you have solid credentials. Coding skills got you the job, but we need you to develop other skills." My leader shared with me where I was failing. Delegation. He shared how I wasn't delegating work to my teammates. Case in point, there was an upgrade that needed to be done. I did the work in 10 minutes or so. To explain that to a few teammates would have taken twice that amount of time or more. Another trap I fell into with delegation is the belief in our values. We can convince ourselves that we're worth more when others can't do the same work as us. I remember working with Jamie the first time. I wasn't quite sure he understood what we were doing. He was always done quickly. Then I finally asked him. Here he had created a script to deploy changes and update dependencies. Oh man, I was doing this all manually. I was worried about delegation, and the people I worked with had better ideas. Perhaps I didn't know everything I thought I did. A few years later, I got to work with a leader named John. Now, we knew each other through a mutual friend, and I had begun to coach individuals and teams. John wanted an outside resource to help him change his team's mindset. He shared how most IT people work with others in a transactional fashion. We get the requirements and we solve the issue. John said, Tom, my team is like bank tellers. They get asked to fix something and they do, just like a teller gets a check and deposits the check. I want my team to be more like a financial planner. A financial planner builds a relationship. Then they can anticipate needs. So you're saying, John, you want your team to have better relationships with their customers? John said, Tom, if they have better relationships, they will develop empathy and understanding. Relationships, understanding, and empathy? Huh? That won't work. That's what I thought at the time, but I was wrong. John knew his team wasn't as great as communicators as he expected. He asked them to talk to the community directors when they traveled. These conversations helped them empathize. Instead of just fixing the problem, they fostered relationships too. Each little change John made helped his team understand the community directors had many things on their plate. These conversations also worked the other way too. The community directors began to give John's team space. If something went wrong, they trusted them to resolve it. John proved me wrong. He overcame his deficit by being curious and empathetic. He was able to change the way his team interacted with the organization. And he became very influential in the company as well. So much so that he has since been given additional responsibilities. From bank tellers to financial planners, he remade the image of his IT team. This brings me to my main idea. Coding skills got you the job. Influence will get you the career. Coding skills got you the job. Influence will get you the career. What do I mean? Developers are focusing on technology skills only. If we truly want to set ourselves apart, we need to know how to influence and collaborate with teams. Gone are the days when we could just send in requirements with pizza and out pops code. Organizations are looking for more from their developers. The problem, my problem, was I was terrible at relationships. I had confirmation. I had proof. Although, funny enough, I didn't start out as a developer. My first stop in my professional career was quite different. My first job out of college. It seems like yesterday. I started at Wallace. What is Wallace, you say? We sold business forms and office supplies in Des Moines, Iowa. Kind of like Dunder Mifflin. Armed with a business management degree and no real idea, I had 3 job options when I graduated from college. I could sell insurance, or I could sell life insurance, or I could sell business forms. So I did what any sane person would do. I sold business forms. Who wants to call on their friend's parents for insurance anyways? Did I mention that Des Moines is the insurance capital of the world? Back to my first day at Wallace. Can you believe I had to make a few cold calls before lunch? Let me remind you, in college, the only time I called my friends was when we were having a kegger. Getting people to buy business forms is a bit more difficult than getting college students to drink beer. Now, I really didn't want to make those calls, but lunch was getting close. I was given 3 prospects from another sales representative to call on. Hello, is Mike Huff available? Yeah, can you tell him that Tom Henricksen called? Yeah, I'm from Wallace. Click. Whew. Hello, this is Tom Henricksen, your new Wallace representative. Oh, sorry, Mr. Hagna. I apologize if our label's talking. Product. Whoa, click. I guess we got disconnected there. Whew. Okay, just one more and we can go to lunch. What? Do we call on gentlemen's clubs? My coworkers all die laughing. It turns out this is their way of initiating new sales representatives. My sales career went down in flames pretty quickly. Similar to Tommy Boy, my sales techniques were not appreciated. Soon after my first day in sales, I started to realize something. This wasn't going anywhere. A friend from high school shared with me the opportunity in technology, so I began to pursue a different path and get a new degree. I left my job in sales and began work as a developer. Now, as you can imagine, working as a developer is quite a bit different than working in sales. Now, the sales office I worked in was always full of people talking. They'd be talking on the phones to customers or talking to each other. The developers I worked with, well, they were a quiet bunch on the whole. Friday afternoon in the sales office, the newest rep had to go get beer for everyone. Friday afternoon for the developers was quiet just like the rest of the week. Now, perhaps it's starting to sound like I didn't want to make this change, but that was not the case. I slowly began to realize I was more Spock than Jimmy Fallon. The quiet contemplative work of a developer suited me more. As my software career began, I worked with lots of old tools and technologies at the time. I wanted to move into something more current, what the cool kids were doing. I started to hear a lot of buzz around the Java language. In my free time, and nights and weekends, I would read and work through tutorials. All this work paid off a few months later when a company leader came to me and said, "Tom, would you be able to help Dave with a new application?" Turned out they needed someone who could write an application using Java. I, of course, agreed. Like Luke beginning to use the Force, I was starting with some basics. As my Java skills began to improve from experience, I learned a few other things too. I began to work with someone who seemed quite sharp from a technical perspective. Although Eric wasn't really easy to get along with, he would yell at people he worked with. You might say he was a complete jerk sometimes. The managers and team allowed this to happen in large part because he was productive. I can still see it now when I close my eyes. Now, Eric was a smoker and he was trying to quit, which made him even more testy. Eric and Sri were working together on some files when I came walking down a row of cubes, and Eric was in Sri's cube yelling. You know how people get mad and their veins are about ready to pop out of their head? Eric's veins were about ready to explode. Then he ran out the door. I guess he needed a smoke. I asked Sri if he was okay. He said he was okay and then looked at me and said, "But no one should have to put up with him." Sri couldn't have been more correct. Eric was a tyrant who ran around like Darth Vader, intimidating people. And we all put up with this terrible treatment just because he was able to code a lot. I would like to tell you that Eric was let go and the team was able to move on. The company did nothing to him. His behavior was left unhandled. Learning how to be a good team player doesn't come naturally to some. Eric wasn't a team player. He was out for himself. If you work with a coding hero and they take vacation, things can fall apart. Let me share an example of a leader who dealt with a similar issue. Now, Ben was a leader that I worked with, and he had a coding hero. We'll call him Dave. Now, Dave would code solutions that were more complex than others could understand. Now, Dave was coming up on a milestone birthday. To celebrate, he was going to bike across multiple states with all his gear. Now, Ben, he knew this was going to be an issue. So he met with the team and they discussed the challenges. The team decided to begin to have knowledge transfer sessions with Dave. Ben helped foster this collaboration with the team. This enabled the team to slowly chip away at the knowledge gap, and the team became more resilient. At my next stop, I began to master my skills in Java. I was responsible for an application that required me to learn some new technologies. Now, software development can be a bit like trending song sales on iTunes. One day something's hot, the next day it's out of date. During this time in my career, many open source tools became popular. Mastery for Luke Skywalker came after a battle with Darth Vader. Programming is a lot like writing. As the author Stephen Pressfield says, the amateur tweets, the pro works. Professional programmers show up every day and slay small demons. Now, the first skill I had to master as a developer was debugging. Today, the tools are much more mature. One of the first applications I had to debug didn't have any such tools. I was armed with print statements and a log file. Quite primitive by today's standards. All right, let's see here. How can I find out where that value is being set? All right, let's add a print statement, recompile. Oh, compile error. I forgot the semicolon. Okay, let me update that, add the semicolon, run the report. Oh man, the database isn't set up right. Okay, let me update that table, updated, run the report, table up. Now that looks better. Of course, debugging is so much easier today, but we still need to use the old bean. As Steve McConnell points out in his book, Code Complete, we need to learn the types of mistakes we make. Early in my Java career, I made the same mistake time and again. I would forget to initialize my variables. I can still hear my coworker Ken laughing at me when he would look at my code and point out my obvious error. We need to learn the types of mistakes we make. Sometimes it helps to take a step back and reflect on how we are doing. How can I improve my coding, debugging, and testing? Software developers like to impress each other. I had to use the singleton pattern to fix that. Don't worry, most developers don't know what that means either. There are many esoteric topics we can talk about for hours. In Essentialism, the disciplined pursuit of less, Greg McEwen shares how important editing is to journalism. Of course, the journalists bring the ideas and write up the stories, but the editor has the important job. They review the piece and rework it. Over my years, I've mentored many developers. One in particular sticks out. He began reading about code basics. This made him add unnecessary code from time to time. I remember debugging an error he was getting together when I asked him, "Why is this loop here?" When he looked at me unsure and said, I don't know. I thought it would help. He thought it would help. Once we removed his unnecessary loop, we resolved his error. Adding code is easy. Knowing what to keep is hard. Now, it's not that I'm saying computer science basics are not important. We need to master these too. However, if we put our sole focus on them, our careers will falter. I spoke earlier about Eric. He had mastered computer science. His teammates, though, couldn't stand him. We need to be good at our work and get along with our team. If we do just one of these, we aren't doing our job. All right, that is the first half. I'm going to pause there and see if there's any questions. That's good, Paul. Yeah, very good. Yeah, there's no PowerPoints involved, so no PowerPoints were harmed during or making this presentation.
How long did it take you and how often did you have to practice to get to this level? That's my project manager curiosity question.
So that's a good question, Tanya. So what I did during the pandemic, so initially in 2020, I went through a program called Heroic Public Speaking, and they usually do it in person, and it's actually literally 20 miles from my house where they usually do it in person. But basically over 2020, I was practicing the speech. It's a 10-month course. They put you through, like, you create the ideas, you write the speech, and then you practice it. So the people that started it were are professional actors. So they, work you all the way through their professional system. They both have masters. And but yeah, I gave this presentation, I think 26 or 27 times in 2021. I should count up how many I've done it this year. Probably close to 10 or so already this year, but I do work on it every day. Every morning I try to work on it before I do my quote unquote real job, if you will.
That is really cool. Thank you for sharing that part,
Yeah.
because I know that's, public speaking is sometimes one of our biggest fears.
Mhm.
but it can be a great driver for
Mhm.
success.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that.
And to Paul's point, so this heroic public speaking, they try to get people to basically perform and speak, not so much. And I was guilty of this before, and I'm sure you've seen people do this. Like, oh, my point number one is here. Oh yeah, it says communication because it says it on the slide. So I'm going to talk
I
about
do that.
communication.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
do
I did
that.
it too.
Guilty.
I've done
Guilty.
it before. So, but that's one of the things
Yeah.
is they try to craft it and get you to, incorporate more things and, so it's a fun thing.
Yeah, when I was in Toastmasters,
Mhm.
we were going over here, and my background coming up, I was actually in desktop support, and I would give security briefings and classes to a lot of the employees there on site. And my tip to them basically is, normally we don't start off in desktop support, doing public presentations. Pretty much it's all a one-on-one. And it's okay, so you take that and you work with it, and one of the tips you generally learn giving public presentations is to maintain eye contact, but
Yeah.
you shift your gaze from one part of the audience to another. So within your mind, you think to yourself, okay, I'm having a one-on-one session with this person, and I shift in the one-on-one with this person, and just,
Yeah.
keep your eye contact flowing that way. And it's worked really well for me.
Mhm.
But yeah, I did have to kind of keep my hands, either pointing towards the audience and not towards my imaginary board.
Yeah. Yep. That's a good point. Yeah. That's one thing too with our virtual time. Like as a speaker, you want to look around at the audience, but if I look away from the camera, you guys think I'm looking, somewhere
Right.
else. So we have to kind of reconvene our thoughts and how we do this. So yeah, that's a good point. So as you guys, did somebody else have something they want to share? I'll be quiet there for a second.
Oh no, that was probably me not being on mute and typing something.
No worries. No worries. So as you heard in the presentation there, we talked a lot about relationships. So I learned a lot from that leader that I worked with, John is his name. And he kind of helped me understand relationships, how to foster them, how to really think about that. As I mentioned, I'm a developer. I wasn't thinking that way. Relationships were like far away from my mind, but those are so, so important things as we, and you guys as project managers know that, that's something you deal with day in and day out. But, what are some of the things, you guys do? Obviously being involved in PMI, I'm guessing is a great thing to help foster professional relationships, but maybe there's some other things too. Yeah, being interested in other people and their stories. Yeah. Listen more than I speak. Yep. Respect the time. Yeah. Very good, Luann. Yeah, those are good points. So feel free, like I said, if you want to come off mute, you can share that too, or if you're more comfortable in the chat. I know we're about all Zoom professionals by now after the last couple of years, so whichever is good. So now another thing that I like to ask people, I always seen when I give this presentation, I see a lot of interesting career transitions. As you heard earlier on, I was in sales first. I came out of school and I wasn't originally a developer. So, maybe you guys have gone through some career transitions, throughout your career. Maybe you haven't always been, maybe you have always been a project manager. And, so I find it interesting to hear the different, career paths that people go down and how they, they kind of wind up, for instance, like I knew a developer once that had an English major in college, so you hear these things, you talk to people. I gave this presentation 2 nights in a row, like a Tuesday, Wednesday. I gave it to a group of Miami IIBA chapter. And then the next, I think it was like a PMI chapter in California or something, I forget. But I thought this was really interesting. This person was a teacher first and then became a BA. And then I think the second night had been a teacher and then became a project manager. So, you see where people come from different career paths and they, make interesting transitions. So Lee's been a project manager for a while. I won't do the math in my head. So, but yeah. Transition, yes. Yeah. Now, Casey, you bring up an interesting point there that, kind of that we're working in a different environment, and it's kind of different to, like you mentioned, build those relationships with stakeholders. That can be tougher. And I'm guessing this group's probably got some interesting answers for that question. So what are some things maybe you guys have done? Because I know we've already talked a little bit about relationships, so I think that is germane to the discussion, but what are some things you guys do to help, foster those connections or keep those connections with some of those stakeholders when you're working virtually or, via Zoom or Teams or whatever you guys are using? Anybody have any ideas?
I had worked in an organization that had brought everybody together in the virtual setting, kind of like a recurring IT happy hour. It wasn't really, or it was coffee hour actually, because it was in the mornings. It wasn't so much happy hour, and everybody would do their funny coffee cups, have a theme, and just talk about something outside of stress, outside of the pandemic, outside of work, just be human and share stories. And so that helped to raise awareness to the different individuals, because you don't get that quite as much anymore over those water cooler conversations like you used to.
Yeah, you have to be intentional more, don't you, Tanya?
You definitely have to be more intentional and not shy, and just kind of relax with other people, and don't always be about work, because everybody's so on guard. They think it's always about work, but you get work done more effectively if you can actually relax around the other person and treat them like human beings with things going on all the time. So.
Yeah, that's a good point that you make there, like just kind of understanding where they're at and what's going on in their life, because sometimes you never know what people have going on at their house. It might be something that you're like, okay, why don't you go deal with that now? And
that empathy kind of kicks in and goes a long way. I mean, I've seen times where people maybe abuse that a bit, but I've also seen where a manager or leader having that type of empathy makes a huge difference.
Yeah. So one other question I have for you guys, and being part of this group, I'm guessing this is a good way for you guys to do. You probably already do a lot of this, but how do you mentor other project managers? So feel free to share that in the chat or come off mute. How do you mentor other project managers?
So I'll come off mute again. One thing, and I don't know about Jared, but I really found it at the leadership conference for PMI recently. Being a leader in the board chapter, keeping up with the speaking events, keeping up with the schedule, keeping everything on task, and making sure that we have recurring events where people can engage, get PDUs, can be a challenge. So having that opportunity to talk to other people across the United States to hear what type of methods they were using to spike engagement was helpful. And it just reminded me, it's okay to share your struggles. Everybody's got them. And sometimes we solve problems collectively better than alone.
That is true. Yes. Ask and listen what issues are trying to do. Yeah. Working with other PMs, be respectful, achievements and skill sets. Yeah. See collaboration and mutual respect. That's good, Kimberly, excuse me. Weekly status reports and meetings. Yeah, lots of good ideas there. People are sharing in the chat. Thanks for sharing all that, guys. Build a network of PMs in the company. Yeah, that's always a good one. If you can do like a community of practice, or lots of different ways to build those. Like for instance, I've seen different organizations have like reading groups or communities of practice for that. That's really good. Commiserate over margaritas. Yes, always a good way. Very good. Excellent. Any other questions or comments? Well, I appreciate everyone sharing that in the chat. So what I will do now, we're going to go into the second half of the presentation, and I have a few more questions for you guys, and then we'll debrief, and I'll hand it back over to Tanya. So any other questions before we jump back in? All right, this is the second half of Humans Are Hard, Code is Easy. As I learned more about soft skills, my career progressed, starting out as a developer. Then I moved into a senior developer role. Next, I was promoted into a technical lead. And then finally, I became a manager of software development. At this point, I was feeling pretty good about my career progression. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was a Friday morning in May. I took my kids to school and came into the office at my normal time, a little before 8 a.m. Oddly enough, my boss was in. He usually came in at 9 or after. Anyways, I sat down and unpacked my things. Then Scott, my boss, came to my desk and said, "Tom, can I talk with you?" I said, "Sure." And I followed Scott to his office. Although when we came to his office, he took a right instead. That's strange, as I thought as I followed Scott down the hallway. Then he took a left into Sandy's office. Who is Sandy, you ask? Well, she was the director of human resources. We sat down, and then Scott looked at me and said, "Tom, this is your last day here." If you've ever had that said to you at work or in a relationship, you know what it feels like. The rest was strange as I felt the calm come over me. I knew something was going to happen. Although as I looked across the table, I could tell Scott and Sandy felt terrible. They discussed the next steps. I packed my things and left. Getting fired gives us a good chance to reflect. What did we do wrong? How could this have been avoided? As I look back, I realized one lesson first. What led to this was a lack of clarity. I needed to ask better questions. Therefore, the team I led did not execute accordingly. Processing this, though, took time, as we can get frustrated and want to blame others. However, we need to own our mistakes. That helped me move forward. The second lesson I learned was the importance of relationship management. As John taught us earlier, we need to continually foster our connections. I began to reach out to my network, and the opportunities were plentiful. So even something as trying as getting fired can be a moment for learning if we take the time to unpack the wisdom. Mastering basic skills require guidance. Early in my career, I worked with a software developer named Wei. He instilled in me a systemic approach that I still use today. Software development is essentially problem solving. Wei began to notice oftentimes I was trying to solve 5 things at once. Wei's guidance was brought clear to me a few years later when I attended a seminar. At Michael Hyatt's Best Year Ever conference, he discussed goal setting. Michael said, "Detailed plans are great if you're building a nuclear submarine. For everything else, just focus on the next step." Wei and Michael agreed on this point. Don't overthink it. In Proverbs, it is said, "In the multitude of counselors, there is safety." Luke's journey first brought him to Obi-Wan Kenobi, where he learned some basics, similar to what I learned from Wei. He kept learning, and so have I. Reflection doesn't come easy for me. I want to move on to the next thing. In David Marquis' book, Leadership is Language, he details the red work, the doing, and the blue work, the thinking. In the book, David discusses how important they are, both aspects of making progress. Marquis walks us through the Industrial Revolution, where the workers did the red work and the managers did the blue work. Today, us knowledge workers must do both. This simple pause can give us a chance to step back and reflect. How can I or we do this better? Think, apply, reflect. By now, you're starting to think, "Tom, I'm a developer. I don't need no stinking soft skills." Of course, if you don't want your career to get better, keep on keeping on. My career path has changed dramatically as I've learned the importance of communication, relationships, and influence. Let's explore 3 core soft skills. These will set the stage for a career transformation. So remember, coding skills got you the job, influence will get you the career. Number 1, communication. Listen to what is being said. Ask good questions and seek clarity. Developers who do this write better code. They don't assume they know the answer. Part of communication is knowing your message. Too many times in my career, I've just started talking. Know what you want to say and say it. Number 2, influence. In How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie describes how we need to talk in terms of the other person's interest. Now, I once tried to convince a corporate vice president we should use a new technology. He wasn't interested at all. However, the next time I spoke to him, I aligned a technical change with a corporate objective. The outcome of that conversation was quite different. Number 3 of the 3 core soft skills is leading change. When we want to lead a change, we need to share the vision. A few years ago, I was fortunate to work with a sharp product owner named Nakia. We began working together on an application for customer service representatives. As the team began, we were really struggling with understanding her vision for the product. That's when Nakia realized we needed a field trip. She had the entire team spend a day with those customer service representatives. We got to see their struggles. The team came back energized and with a better understanding. Nakia was able to lead a change by connecting and sharing the vision with the team. These 3 core soft skills can change your career. Let me share a story how I use them myself. In my first role as a manager, I tried to get to know the team. This can help build trust and influence with them. Perhaps you're starting to think, Tom, this isn't going to work for me. Let me tell you about AJ. His path was a rocky one. AJ was a strong developer, but he worked in a slow, methodical fashion and always kept his emotions in check. Over time, his teammates became irritated with his style. I tried to get to know him. For instance, AJ traveled to Germany to pick up his new BMW. He was quite excited about that. Still, his unwillingness to communicate with others, and especially the product owner, was wearing thin. That's when my manager came to me and said, Tom, it is time for AJ to decide if he wants to be part of the team. My manager asked me to put AJ on a PIP, or performance improvement plan. I had 60 days to help him improve or else. Despite his strong coding skills, his career was on a downward trajectory. When I met with AJ and explained this situation, he yelled at me, "I'm the best developer you got," and stormed right out of the meeting. The first 2 weeks after this incident were really shaky. AJ wouldn't talk to me or anyone. I kept checking in on him daily. I knew he was an introvert. He needed his space and time. Eventually, AJ and I sat down and discussed the PIP and how it made him feel. That's when I got him to agree to try some experiments. We met as a team and created some working agreements. These clarified everyone's role. Also, it stated how we would work together. I got the product owner to give him one final shot. In the end, we were able to give AJ the space he needed. Along with coaching him and his teammates, we were able to work through it. I was able to help AJ in the team by communicating and influencing the team.
I'm just really concerned.
I learned how to help AJ, myself, and others.
Sharon, can we talk about this when I'm finished with this web?
You can do this too. Coding is important, but it's not enough. We can keep our head down and bozo it through our career, but that doesn't get us where we want to go. Relationships matter. Empathy and understanding matter. Communication matters. Practicing these soft skills can give you more influence, which leads to more success. Better collaboration with your coworkers, people seeking out your opinion as an expert, managers choosing you for the most exciting projects. Practicing soft skills is how you code the future of your dreams. All right, any questions or comments? Thank you. So I have a few questions for you guys before I think we're got a minute or two here. But you heard that I had a career misstep there. So you heard I was let go at a company a few years ago. It's been quite a while actually now, but what types of career missteps have you had? Now, I'm not saying everybody's had the same experience I have, but maybe you've, for instance, said the wrong thing to the wrong person. Maybe you've, offended someone in an organization or cut someone off in a meeting and you didn't know who they were. Need for soft skills. That's right, Richard. They usually don't. They usually think that they need to learn a new coding technique or something like that. That will get them ahead. So yes. Far too open with certain individuals. Yeah, that can get you in trouble. Yes, Travis. Anybody else have any career reacting emotionally? Yeah. Excuse my boss. Ah, interestingly, yeah. That can put you in an interesting dilemma. Yep. It's important to have our standards, isn't it? All right. So another thing is we talked about this and we can wrap up with this here, but in communication, you heard that when I was let go, a lot of that was around communication, clarity. So what are some things that you guys do to ensure you're aligned with communication? So making sure that, you and some stakeholders, I'm especially guessing as project managers, you're probably doing a lot of work with stakeholders, trying to make sure everyone's aligned to what direction they want, what's the priority. What are some things you guys do to help create that alignment? Yeah, Lee, ask for clarification and feedback. Very good. What other things are people doing? Respond, don't react. Yes. That can be hard though, can it? Sometimes we want to react, but we need to respond, don't we? Very good. Be clear and upfront. Yeah, use what I hear you saying. Yeah, that's good to kind of paraphrase it back, making sure you understand. Checkpoints, weekly check-ins with stakeholders. Yeah, discuss project. Very good. Concise emails with decisions and upcoming steps. That's a very good point, Travis, that you mentioned that concise word. That can be hard for sometimes for people. I know it can be hard for me. It's one of those things I've worked on, and it can be helpful because I'm sure you realize a lot of your stakeholders are very busy people, get a lot of email. And if you make it really long, sometimes they don't read it, don't they? Meetings, review, everyone's takeaway. Yeah, that's good. Very good, Kristen. All right. Well, I want to appreciate everyone's time. Feel free. I'm just going to put my LinkedIn information there in the chat if you ever want to connect, or if you think of another place where this presentation would work well. But I want to thank all of you for your time. Appreciate it. And I want to turn it back over to Tanya. I really appreciate your time, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Tom. This was great. And I love the part where you kind of explain how you got to this point too. That was That was wonderful because I know a lot of other chapters do Toastmasters.
Mhm.
It's not something that we've ever done with our chapter, but I've got a lot of connections at Dallas. So it's probably something that during the later part of the year, we need to study up on a little bit better and sort of dip our toes in the water to
Mhm.
mentoring other project managers to kind of go at public speaking together and
Yeah.
try and tackle it that way. One quick chapter thing that I want to do, just to say out loud, I know I put it in the chat, but we've all been very engaged. So the PDUs will be reported from members of the Baton Rouge chapter. Please allow about 3 to 5 business days for those to reflect. For those of you that are guests of the chapter tonight, I wanted to say the code out loud so y'all could write it down and submit on pmi.org. It's C1065, I as in Ivan, F as in Frank, J as in Jack, T as in True, 8. So I just wanted to make sure that that was out there. And as always, if y'all have any questions or if y'all missed it, y'all know that y'all can email us. Mine is president@pmibatonrouge.org. We've got Emily, who's over membership, and we've got Jared, who's over our programs at pmibatonrouge.org. So, but I think this was great engagement tonight, and I just wanted to ask too if anybody had any questions too or closing comments that they'd like to ask Tom. Let's see, Jared, put it in the
Well,
chat. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's absolutely a terrific presentation. Love the topic, love the delivery. I mean, just top-notch delivery. If you wanted a great example of what it looks like to do engaging virtual content, right? I think this is one. A lot of us are, I know, struggling with, how do we go and recreate virtually the experiences that we're able to deliver in real life, right? How are we translating the things that we've learned to do well into this new platform, these new media that we're using now? So I love this. This is a great example of that done really well. So thank you so much for that, Tom.
Thank you.
And I wanted to give quick updates just on our next meeting series. So for those of you that sometimes come to our Baton Rouge in person, this month we're not going to be having it in person. We're going to try to get back to in-person events in May. As Jared alluded to earlier in the meeting, he had sent out a survey a little while back, and we're probably going to be experimenting with some different methods of socialization, whether that's a dinner, whether it's, less formal, and we'll have more information on that. And then our next couple of months for speakers is booked. Our next speaker is going to be Ashaki Sorrell on Tuesday, May 10th. And she's going to be educating us on connecting and learning more about each other through LinkedIn as the tool for connection. So, and I think, Tom, I'm trying to remember, I'm trying to remember if you reached out to me directly on my email or if it was through LinkedIn first.
I think it was through LinkedIn first.
Through LinkedIn?
Yeah.
And it is. I mean, do you find as a public speaker that that's a great way to connect with people too?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
that's usually the way I find a lot of engagements and stuff through that. So it's a good medium for connecting and networking.
I agree. It definitely helps to kind of spread the message and target it. And so for those of you too, and I don't have the link memorized, but we do have a LinkedIn page. If you look up PMI Baton Rouge, we do have a chapter where we share a lot of our different communications, and the board will try and put some of our information out on our personal LinkedIn as well to kind of keep the connection going and keep everybody informed. So. Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. We appreciate it. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. And Jared, I think you're on mute. Did you have any wrap-up comments? Or?
No, very, very well done, Tom. Thank you so much. Great to meet you. We'll get connected.
Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank y'all.